How are we going Facebook Live? It is Cameron Stewart and Sharon Trafford here today on Facebook. Do you want to say hello?
Hello.
So, like I said in the previous post here above this, is we're going to start doing a series of video interviews with other investors, traders, developers, and people in the marketplace to really give an insight to people why people get involved in this industry. Like for myself, I didn't get involved because I love property. I got involved because I wanted to use it as a vehicle to help me achieve my goals and my aspirations in life. And the whole reason behind this series of videos is to really, inspire and help you maybe make some decisions for your own future and get an insight from a whole range of different people in a positive light. I think investors take a lot of flack in the mainstream media and things like that, but I want you to hear it from the people that are out there living their life, doing investing in property, trading, or whatever the case may be, so that they can live their life at their own terms. So this is not about me today. This is about Sharon. So the objective today is just to really get Sharon to sort of go through, where she's come from, and how long she's been investing, what she's been able to achieve, and maybe give you some insights of maybe some of the mistakes she's made and things like that can help and benefit some other people. So, Sharon, like I said, probably give yourself give a bit of a rundown about yourself. Like where do you sort of stem from, and what sort of led you to being in Auckland and doing what you're doing today?
Okay, so I'm originally from the UK, so I'm from a place called Birmingham. I moved to London and lived in London for 6 years, and I met my ex-partner and we got married and we started investing in houses. So we didn't kind of understand what we were doing, so we had the ability to be able to buy houses in great locations, and this was before the property boom was taking off in probably 2000, I think it was 2001 or something like that, early 2000s.
Was that in Auckland? Or?
No, this was in the UK.
Oh, okay, cool.
So this is where our investment journey started, but it's like I say, we didn't actually understand what we were doing. So we bought these houses in great locations, went through, did very minor cosmetic renovations on them, and ended up selling them for a huge profit. And in 2003, I had my first child. He was 2 years of age, and then we moved over to Auckland, which is where my ex-partner was from. So we had a young family at that stage, and I wasn't working. Mark turned around to me one day and said, what are you going to do to contribute to the family? So my background was in accountancy, so I was doing management accounts for software companies and merchant banks in the UK, and that's not what I wanted to get back into over here. And so I went for my first job interview with a family-run company, husband and wife, and I spent an hour with this couple, and I walked out of there and I made a phone call to my ex Mark and I said, I'm not working for anybody. So as of that moment in time, I said that I wasn't going to work for anybody, and then I went on a property investment journey. So my contribution to the family was to get onto a mentoring course, which I did do, and go out with two young kids. One of them was 3 and the other one was a year old. And I used to go to West Auckland and South Auckland and check out properties, and my ex was working so he could fund it, and I was the one that went out and basically bought them.
Just touching base on that, I know in a lot of the forums, property forums and things like that out there, there's a lot of talk about property mentorship, and should you get it, should you not get it. In my case, I found it very beneficial in the early phases of my career in the property game. For yourself, was that having those insights from other people that had had success at that time, did that give you more confidence to move forward, or what was the reason behind that when you started that sort of mentoring type stuff?
Well, the mentoring was, for me, it was a 3-month course, and we met one evening a month. So I paid $1,900 at the time, I think it was. And I had a great mentor. But I think you've got to have the basics of what you're looking for. So in the UK for me, it was location, location, location. So it was always buying that house in the right area. And if you enhanced it in some way, then you were going to make money on it. So when I came to Auckland and was looking in the areas of Manurewa and Papakura, the housing was very different, the type of people that were living there. So that was one thing that really was kind of a brick wall for me. And also the different kind of structures of housing, like the cladding, the brick, you've got weatherboard, weatherside, you've got lots of different claddings, whereas in the UK it's usually just brick.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that can catch you out, you know, especially the weatherside homes and some of the leaky building type stuff that we've had the issues with. That would have been a bit of a eye-opener for you, especially coming from the UK. Well,
definitely. And I wasn't, I hadn't bought any properties at that time, so I wasn't experienced in that. So when I went on my first mentoring course, there was only a group of 5 of us, so it wasn't a room packed with like 20 people. There was just 5. So we all got to know each other really well, and we all got one-on-one time with the mentor as well. But it was, like I said, the stigma for me was the areas and the kind of people that I will be inheriting in those properties. And my mentor turned around and said, has anybody got any questions? So I put to him, I said, look, how do I get over this? I said, you know, I'm looking at these houses that are mouldy, and you know, the streets, and there's broken glass, and there's this, that and the other. And he just turned around and said, get over it. And that's all he said, was get over it. And I left that course that night and I drove over the bridge, and my inner self said, you can do this. And I went out, and I was a star student, and I bought 3 houses in 1 week. So I bought my first property, investment property, which was a home and income in Manurewa.
And when was that?
This was 2005.
Okay, now in 2005, that was, things were starting to heat up?
It wasn't, the area wasn't flooded with investors, so there wasn't that much fighting over properties. So you could turn up, like this property was advertised in the personal column of one of the papers, and I was the only one on it.
Yeah.
So there was no other competition around. So I put an offer in for $350, I think it was. It got accepted. So it was a legal home and income, and it got accepted. So I settled on that one, and then I bought another property in Milford on the seaward side. We offered $550 cash for that, and that got accepted. And then I bought another property in the same week in Takanini.
Man, those numbers it's just amazing time in the game though, isn't it? Like that home and income in Manurewa here would be worth, what, $850, $900, something along those lines today.
Yep. And it's returning just under $1,000 a week in rent.
So what's your sort of your gross yield on that would be?
My portfolio,
at the time when you bought that place?
At the time, it was still good, about 9%, I think it was.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. And that would have increased over time as you've reduced your principal and the rent increases, because, you know, you're expecting around a 5% or so increase per annum, isn't it, roughly?
Yeah.
So your cash flow position in that property and your equity position is, over time, is significantly increased.
Yep.
I think that's important for people to understand that, isn't it? You know.
And I think that's what you've got to figure out, is what you're actually trying to achieve at the start of your investment journey. You know, are you buying houses to sell, or are you buying houses to hold? So my whole strategy was to buy and to hold. It was never to sell. So every single property that I've bought, I've held on to since 2005.
So Sharon and I have been very different from that point of view. I've sold the majority of the houses and traded a lot of the properties that I've bought, and you know, like if I had held a lot of that stuff in the early days, my portfolio would be significantly larger than what it is today. So, you know, buying and holding in the long term is where it's at, isn't it? You know. Yeah,
definitely. And I think it's all about maintaining them as well, because if you maintain them, you get good tenants, and then you get good rents as well. So you need to keep on top of that, but I think you need to have that strategy set in stone at the start. And if you want to divert from that, then that's fine, but that's not something that I want to do. So I know what I want, I know how I'm going to make money, and I'm quite happy with what I'm doing.
You're when you look at the big picture of, like, because, you know, there's been various stages in your property investment career. Like, what was the driver behind that? I know being a mum, being a young mum at the time, and you know, having the ability to have the time and stuff would have been a big burner for you. But what was what was the desire to invest? Because what was the reason behind that? Like, what was the goal, the objective, the dream, or whatever you want to call it, behind starting that journey?
I think it's all about being financially free, and living the life that you want to live. I got made redundant in London, so I got to a
Cool. We just had a phone call, so we get this with technology.
So I got to a stage where my destiny was in somebody else's hands, and that's what I didn't like. So
we just had a second call. Everyone's trying to ring.
Stop ringing.
Stop ringing. Stop ringing. Stop ringing.
So it was like, I didn't want somebody dictating how my life was going to be. So we got 2 young boys as well. So it was all about providing for those kids. And we knew that the money that we had was to be invested in property, because that was going to get us to where we wanted to be.
Yeah.
So, and it's my passion as well. You've got to be quite passionate about what you do. And property's always been a thing, that I like. I love different styles of houses, so it's a kind of one of them things I think it's just grown over time. But when I was in my early 20s, I never wanted to own property.
Yeah.
Never wanted to didn't want the responsibility, and couldn't see where property was going to get me until I met somebody that showed me what property was about.
Yeah, well, because I think, for a lot of people, I know for a lot of young people that are watching this video as well, people that are maybe haven't invested yet or whatever, is it's not as glorious as what it sounds. There's times where you think, why the hell am I doing this? And you would have had those moments in your time, Sharon, as you get tenants trash houses, or you have budgets in your renovations go haywire, or you have an insurance claim or something. There's always something going pear-shaped at some point in time. And what would be some of the lessons that you would say to other people that are maybe looking to invest, or maybe other people that are on that path already? What would be some of the things that you would warn people about, or maybe try and stay away from your perspective? Because look, at the end of the day, none of us, we've all got our own perspective on things, and you'll have your own ideas around from that sort of stuff. So what would you recommend to people out there in the market, who are starting their journey, what to look out for, what not to do, and things like that? What would be your sort of advice on that?
Well, the first one will be, when we made a lot of money in the UK, we brought that money over, and we got lazy and we got quite greedy so we found an investor and went into joint ventures with this person, and he wasn't what he made himself out to be. So we lost about 300 grand by handing money over to an investor to invest for us. Our portfolio would have been a lot bigger if we hadn't have done that. So we ended up losing 300 grand by doing that, because we were lazy. So that's one thing that I wouldn't do again. If you trust what you do yourself, then plow on with that and have faith in that. You can go into joint ventures and whatever, but you just got to make sure that you get everything written down, and it's got to be foolproof as well, so everybody knows where they stand. So that's one massive lesson that I learned, and I'm glad it happened as well, because I now know that if it happened now, I've got a lot more to lose. So everybody goes through one of those mistakes where we do get lazy and we think that we can just earn money just like that, and it doesn't work like that. You've got to work hard to get where you are. And the other lesson is tenants. So I've had houses that are trashed by tenants, but that was because I was in an industry that I'd never had a big part in. So tenants was another thing that I wasn't used to. So I trusted people again, and you've got to learn, unfortunately, you can't trust a lot of people. So you can't just take what they say as gospel. You've got to have that gut instinct, and you've got to read people, and that all comes with time. So you're going to get times when you're going to get burnt, but don't get disheartened by that. You've got to take it as a lesson, and you've got to move on, and then you won't make those mistakes again. So I've got myself to a situation now where I I wouldn't say don't trust everybody, but I really think about what I'm doing now, and I do what I feel is comfortable. So I don't go outside of that.
Well, you become a lot more strategic.
Yes.
As when you started, you might have just put out offers willy-nilly on this and that, and there was no real strategy or structure around what you were doing initially. I know that's what it was like for me. I just throw offers out left, right, and centre. At everything, you throw enough mud on the wall, eventually it will stick. That's what I was always told. But I think as you've gone through your journey over that, you've become more strategic with how you do things. And I know you run your own company today, and you manage tenants not only for yourself but for other people. And from that side of things, there's probably a lesson or two in regards to that, because property management, as an investor, I know with myself, I've had some extremely bad experiences, and even of late, seeing what's happened with other clients' properties and stuff that have been managed professionally have been disgusting. What would be your pointers or your tips around tenant selection and from that side of things, because that's sort of your forte and that's what you're good at. What would you say to people who are may be looking to invest in regards to that tenant management side of things? What would be your sort of tips or pointers in regards to that?
Well, I think, I've managed my properties from day one, so I've never had anybody in there to do that. So you've got to have a good feeling for people. So I think now that I run my own company, so I get a lot of clients that come to me. So they don't go to the bigger companies now; they're coming to the more boutique companies. So I'm the only one that works in my company. So there's not a changeover of property managers. You need consistency when you're dealing with properties. And you need somebody that's got quite a high standard as well, and preferably somebody that actually owns property, so is an investor themselves, so they know what they're looking for. You get a lot of people go in there and have a job, and a job is a job. They're getting paid to do something, so they don't have a vested interest in the client or the property. They just want to get their money at the end of the day. So when I meet tenants, so I always meet tenants face to face, because tenants can't hide when they're in front of you, but they can hide behind an email or behind a phone call. So having those discussions with tenants and asking outright questions, they're not going to hide. They're actually going to be quite forthcoming. Watching the body language as well. As a tenant, when they're talking to you, are they looking in your eyes, or are they diverting all around the house and looking in different areas? Sometimes that can be that they've got something to hide and they're not being quite truthful. Tenants that turn up in their pyjamas or with food dribbled all down their top, that can be a thing to say that they're not necessarily going to clean the property if they can't look after themselves. So it's little things like that you've got to be looking out for. But what I try and do is, before I actually sign up a tenant, I have about 3 conversations with them prior to signing any paperwork, and I keep having that conversation about what my expectations are as a property manager and whether they're willing to come on board with that. A lot of property managers don't do that. They think that that's probably wasted time. That's not time that's well spent for them. But for me it is, because it's all about getting the right tenant in that property. And I've got to answer to my client. So my first priority is the house. The second priority is the tenant. So I think I've nailed my process and the conditions that I put in place as well. But it's all about the process from the day that tenant enters into that property to when you actually sign them up. And if you don't have the right process in place and just take anybody on, you're going to end up with some really rough people. And the market at the moment is very different. So you're getting all of these people coming out of the woodwork. They've got orders against them, firearms, drugs, criminal convictions. And so you really need to be quite straight onto it and asking those questions, because if you don't ask those questions, you won't find out and you'll end up taking them in the wrong people. So if you want to manage it yourself, go ahead. But you will probably, if you're not a straight to the point person and you can't deal with what you're going to see happen to your property, you need to hand it over to somebody that can deal with it. Yeah,
that's really clear advice. I know, because I've had tenants terribly managed, and I had a whole lot of damage, and I've also managed my own properties as well. So I've done a bit bit of both, and I personally don't find managing the properties myself that hard because I am a fairly direct type of person, and people don't tend to cross the line. But for a lot of people, approaching someone about an issue or whatever is very difficult, and that communication is, and that's why it's important to get a hold of a good property manager and have someone that can actually do that for you. But outside of all of that, what would we've talked about what to sort of stay away from, and if you could give any sort of final words to people that are maybe looking at it straight out of the gate, maybe, because I know I deal with a lot of people from all walks of life, different age groups, and people say I'm going to get into property, or I'm going to start investing, but they don't really know a huge amount about it. Hence why we're doing these videos. I think every person's got their own angle on what's right and what's wrong, and I think if you can take snippets out of each one of these conversations or interviews, like for someone who's maybe in a professional type role or been working for a while, maybe they've got some money there in their KiwiSaver and maybe got a bit of money saved up, what would be, if you were to start over now, because we're in a fairly different type of environment from the cost of getting into the market today is very, very high. You've got a much larger deposit to get in. What would be your take on that for someone starting out today?
I think you've got to, the first thing to do is network with other investors. So have a chat and see what they're doing. There's plenty of people out there that are cash rich but time poor. So you can always joint venture as well. So if you're finding that you can't get into property, there's always other options that you can choose. So, actually getting your step onto that ladder is worth it. But you may have to go into a partnership with somebody to actually do that. Don't overstretch yourself. So, obviously the banks aren't going to lend to you if you can't afford it anyway. But just keep persevering. So if it's something that you want to do, then do it. If you've got a house, this is another thing. If you're living somewhere and you own your own home and you want to buy an investment property, maybe you've got some spare rooms in your house that you can rent out and get some extra income, that can fund. There's different ways, but you've got to think outside of the box. But usually hanging out with other investors and finding out what their strategies are, you may meet up with like-minded people that probably need a little bit of help as well. Yeah,
because you can. Some people will have a lot of cash. Some people have some equity. Some people have neither of both. So they've got to learn how to put a deposit together, and but that all comes down to having the right attitude and the right mindset to when whatever your position is right now, you can actually succeed.
You can.
And what would you say is there anything that you've read, or you've been to a seminar, or you've watched a video, or is there any podcast that you listen to, or anything like that from a personal development point of view that's helped you stay clear-minded so that you could stay focused, so you could get your desired results? Or is there anything that because I'm right into that sort of stuff. You may not be, but I thought I would ask.
I'm not really one of those. I think I'm on everybody's on their own journey.
Yeah.
And I'm one of these people that I know what I want to do, and I try not to focus on too many different things. So I have my investment business, and I have my property management company as well. So that's enough for me to focus on. So I've stopped going to the investment seminars and all of that stuff because I know what I need to do to get me to where I need to be. So I'll buy a house maybe once every 2 years, and then I'll work on my property management business. Then I'll go back to the banks again a couple of years later, and then that's how I increase my portfolio. I'm not a big fan of podcasts and stuff like that, but that's just me. It doesn't mean that different. Everybody's different, but I trust what I think is right for me. And that's what I do. And I've got, I know where I want to be at the end of this. So I know what my end goal is. And I think what a lot of people do is they try and compete with other people, or they look at somebody and think, wow, he's got like 30 houses and I've only got like 5. And you're on your own investment journey, and everybody's financial situations are very, very different. So the day that you start competing yourself with other people is a day that you're actually probably not going to get anywhere. Just focus on what you want to do, have a clear plan, and go through with it. That's I mean, but that's just me. That's the way I do
that's
things.
fine. Like everyone's different, as you say. In regards to your plan and what it is that have you journaled or written anything down like that over the years, or you've just gone and winged it?
I've just winged it. So
that's fine, but there's no right or wrong, by the way.
no, I mean, I've got a really good portfolio that, the last house I bought was in 2016, and I spent 2 months full on site renovating that myself. And that house I bought for about $571,000. It's in Manurewa. It's renting for $595 a week. The rent's just about to go up. But that was valued after 2 months of working on it around about $700,000. So, I've probably maybe spent about $40,000 renovating it. So I made about $100,000 in 2 months, which is, I wouldn't have earned that working for somebody else, basically. No. So what I've done is I'm concentrating on my property management business and getting the houses up to a certain level, which is comfortable for me. And then maybe I'll go back to the banks later on and go and buy another house. But I just don't know at the moment. At the moment, I'm focusing on having a stress-free life. And at the moment I've got a stress-free life. I do what I want to do. I don't answer to anybody except my clients, and they leave me alone because I do a good job. And travelling, spending time with my kids and travelling. And
that's what it's about for you. I know you're an avid traveller. Like you've recently gone to India. You're over there for how long? Are you over in India for?
3 weeks backpacking with my son, my 16-year-old. So this year I'm going to do a couple of weeks in Tonga. So I'll go and travel around Tonga, and I've got friends that are travelling over there at the moment on a boat. So I'll catch up with them and jump aboard for a week, and then at the end of the year I'll be off back to not India but Sri Lanka. So I'll be going and doing some backpacking around Sri Lanka at the end of the year.
Because that's what it's about. Like at the end of the day, guys, if you're watching this, and you'll probably find a fairly common denominator with other investors is there's a goal or something in mind that they want to do, whether it be time to travel or whatever the case may be, and I think that's what's exciting about going out and talking to a whole range of different people. Everyone's got a different insight, everyone's got a different opinion, and we're all very, very different, and we're all on a different journey. And is there anything else that we need to cover really in regards? I think that's pretty much covered off what I wanted to sort of cover, but is there anything else you'd like to say?
I think when you take on property, and this is one thing that I find, is that a lot of owners don't take full responsibility for that property. So if you're getting it renovated or whatever and you've got a project manager in place, that project manager's not responsible for what's gone on with your house, because I find that everybody's always quick to point the finger as well. If you buy a house, you need to maintain it and you need to look after it. It's just like your car. If you've got a brand new car, you need to service it, you need to warrant fitness, you need to do all of that. It's exactly the same with a house, and the more time you spend on that house and you spend money on it, it's going to be worth a lot more later on. So all I can say is if you go into this investment path and you buy property, take responsibility for what you're doing and don't blame everybody else.
That's a great advice, because it is easy to point the finger, isn't it?
So, yeah, and I've had the finger pointed at me being a project manager doing renovations before, and it's not my house, and because that client hasn't spent money on it for years, that's your problem. So take responsibility is all I can say. Whatever you choose to do, you're the one that's made the choice, so don't blame anybody else.
That's great, solid advice, Sharon. So thanks for watching in, guys. As I say, we're going to be doing a heap of these types of videos with a whole range of different people, different age groups, different styles of investing, trading, developing, whatever. So I hope there's added value, and thanks very much, Sharon, for sharing your time this morning. And I hope you all have an awesome day, and we'll see you next time. Cameron Stewart and Sharon Trafford signing out.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.